who at that time was situated in a monastery in Katwa, belonged to the Bharati Sampradaya. According to some authoritative opinions, although Keshava Bharati belonged to the Shankara Sampradaya, he had formerly been initiated by a Vaishnava. He is said to have been a Vaishnava on account of having been initiated by Madhavendra Puri, for some say that he took sannyas from Madhavendra Puri. The temple and deity worship started by Keshava Bharati are still existing in the village known as Katundi, which is under the postal jurisdiction of Kandara in the district of Burdwan. According to the managers of that mutt, the priests are descendants of Keshava Bharati, and some say that the worshippers of the deity are descendants of the sons of Keshava Bharati. In his householder life, he had two sons, Nishapati and Ushapati, and a Brahmin of the name Sri Nakadi Chandra Vidyaratna, who was a member of the family of Nishapati, was the priest in charge at the time that Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati visited this temple. According to some, the priests of the temple belonged to the family of Keshava Bharati's brother. Still another opinion is that they descend from Madhava Bharati, who is another disciple of Keshava Bharati's. Madhava Bharati's disciple Balabhadra who also later became a sannyasi of the Bharati Sampradaya, had two sons in his family life named Madan and Gopal. Madan, whose family's surname was Bharati, lived in the village of Auriya, and Gopal, whose family's surname was Brahmachari, lived in the village of Denduda. There are still many living descendants of both families. Sandipani Muni, who formerly offered the sacred thread to Krishna and Balaram, later became Keshava Bharati. It is he who offered sannyas to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There is another statement about Keshava Bharati in the Gaura Gonadesha Dipika. Quote, according to some authoritative opinions, Keshava Bharati is an incarnation of Akrura. Keshava Bharati offered the sannyas order to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the year 1432 Shakabda in Katwa. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas. All these descriptions, these detailed descriptions, although sometimes may sound tedious, are there for a reason, because there is an actual family tree. What's being described, the Chaitanya tree, is a historical and account of the great souls and incarnations who form the line of disciplic succession coming from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and who lived and breathed devotional service in association with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's not that they actually appear in this world and are real people, with lives and birth dates and so forth that one can trace out. And of course, they're all transcendental and engaged in the process of disseminating the knowledge of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But the details are here to give us a clear understanding of the family tree and how the knowledge comes down. In relationship with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was taking sannyas, he had the goal to give everyone the opportunity to take to Krishna consciousness. And while he was teaching his students, one day a student came to his school and noticed that in his ecstasy, Nimai Pandit was repeating the names of the gopis. And this was a kind of mood of ecstasy and separation from Krishna. And he was a smarta, and he criticized Lord Chaitanya. He said, why are you chanting the names of the gopis? Why don't you chant Krishna's names? And sometimes in Krishna's Leela, Radharani and some of the gopis become annoyed with Krishna out of a sense of love. This is elevated topic of how they become irritated with Krishna. In fact, sometimes when Krishna comes to visit, they'll say, "Tell him we're not here." And so forth. So this is a kind of a mood. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was Krishna and Radharani combined. So when he was in this mood of ecstasy, and the student came and said, "Why don't you chant the names of Krishna?" Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nimai Pandit, became infuriated and began chasing with a stick and blaspheming Krishna all the way, as he was saying, "Why would I think of such a rascal as Krishna? Who wants, Krishna is such a debauchee, why would I want to think of him?" and so forth, chasing after the student. He was in a state of devotional ecstasy. And in this way, the student became completely agitated because he was puffed up with his Brahminical status, priestly status, thinking that he was actually a big shot. So he went to the other students and they conspired. They said that how dare Nimai Pandit offend somebody from our stature in life. And next time, if he tries to do this, then we'll retaliate and so forth. So understanding this anomaly, and that it would be very difficult to catch certain kinds of people in his loving network and bring people to knowledge, Nimai Pandit accepted sannyas. Because at the time, and even now in India, if you walk around as a sannyasi, people may offer you special respect. But back then, if a sannyasi came to town, then everyone would make full facility and offer respects. Even in Thailand, I remember when I first started going there, maybe in 1979, and I'd go there as a brahmachari. Everyone, you'd get on a bus and everyone would stand up and offer you a seat. Because for monks, they like monks there. A similar kind of culture in India, that if a monk, if someone wearing saffron comes, then everyone would immediately offer respect and all facility and so forth. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it was utilitarian that he changed his dress to become a sannyasi. And he took sannyas from Keshava Bharati, but before he did, he told Keshava Bharati that he had had a dream, and that in the dream, Keshava Bharati had given him a mantra. And this was the process of initiation, to receive the mantra from the spiritual master. And he said to Keshava Bharati that, "I would like to tell you the mantra that I heard from you in a dream, just to verify it." So he said, "You come here, I'll whisper it in your ear." And so he said the mantra into Keshava Bharati's ear, which was the sannyas mantra, initiation mantra. This is the process of initiation. The spiritual master will say the mantra into the ear of the disciple. So what happened was that Keshava Bharati was actually first initiated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because nobody can become the spiritual master of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So essentially, Keshava Bharati was initiated, and then he gave back the mantra as a service to his disciple. With the sober and grave Parvananda Puri as the central root and the other 8 roots in the 8 directions, the tree of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stood firmly. From the trunk grew many branches, and from them innumerable others. Thus the branches of the Chaitanya tree formed a cluster or society with great branches covering the whole universe. Purport: our International Society for Krishna Consciousness is one of the branches of the Chaitanya tree. Congratulations. 19th. From each branch grew many hundreds of sub-branches. No one can count how many branches thus grew. I shall try to name the foremost of the innumerable branches. Please hear the description of the Chaitanya tree. And then he begins to name all the devotees, the main devotees on the tree. On the top of the tree trunk branched into 2. One trunk was named Sri Advaita Prabhu and the other Sri Nityananda Prabhu. From these two trunks grew many branches and sub-branches that covered the entire world. These branches and sub-branches and their sub-branches became so numerous that no one can actually write about them. Thus the disciples and the granddisciples of their admirers spread throughout the entire world, and it is not possible to enumerate them all. It looks similar nowadays. There's a lot of generations now coming out from the Krishna consciousness movement. Doesn't it seem that way to you? We didn't have that perspective when we became connected to the Chaitanya tree earlier on as much, did we? In 1973 and all the way through, even up, when Prabhupada was here, he was the elder, and then there was a bunch of kids, young devotees. Sincere as they might have been, there was just such a gap in age between Prabhupada and the young devotees. And it's taken some time to close that gap, but over time, the Krishna consciousness movement is expanding their sub-branches, branches, sub-branches, and sub-sub-branches, and so on, in the form of disciples, grand-disciples, great-grand-disciples. And this is the way of expansion that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had his main branches. And you think of a tree, how it branches out into many different twigs. And in the same way, the Krishna consciousness movement is meant to envelop the whole world through the devotees who become trained in Krishna consciousness, and they go out and teach others. Thus the disciples and the grand-disciples and their admirers spread throughout the entire world, and it is not possible to enumerate them all. As a big fig tree bears fruits all over its body, each part of the tree of devotional service bore fruit. Purport: this tree of devotional service is not of this material world. It grows in the spiritual world where there is no distinction between one part of the body and another. It is something like a tree of sugar. For whichever part of such a tree one tastes, it is always sweet. The tree of bhakti has varieties of branches, leaves, and fruits, but they are all meant for the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are 9 different processes of devotional service. Shravanam, which means Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atman Nivedanam. But all of them are meant only for the service of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, whether one hears, chants, remembers, or worships his activities will yield the same result. Which one of these processes will be most suitable for a particular devotee depends on his taste. Translation: since Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was the original trunk, the taste of the fruits that grew on the branches and sub-branches surpassed the taste of nectar. The fruits ripened and became sweet and nectarian. The gardener Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu distributed them without asking any price. All the wealth in the 3 worlds cannot equal the value of one such nectarian fruit of devotional service. Not considering who asked for it and who did not, nor who was fit and who was unfit to receive it, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu distributed the fruit of devotional service. Purport: this is the sum and substance of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. There is no distinction made between those who are fit and those who are not fit to hear or take part in the Sankirtan movement. It should therefore be preached without discrimination. The only purpose of the preachers of the Sankirtan movement must be to go on preaching without restriction. That is the way in which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduced the Sankirtan movement all over the world.
In Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna says that this message should not be preached to those who are not austere, this seems to be a very clear, bold statement, but we find all the way to the scriptures that should be preached to everyone.
Say it again.
That in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying that this message should not be preached to those who are not austere, and some of the qualities I don't remember now. But we find so many other statements in the scripture. This is a very bold, clear statement by Krishna. But we find so many other places that the message should be given to everyone and anyone, and that devotional service is universally applicable. So I just wonder why Krishna says this in Gita.
Because when you're a gardener, you have to find fertile soil, otherwise you'll waste the seeds. This is an example given in the Bible also about planting seeds and how the sower of seeds goes out and the first batch of seeds lands on rocks, and then some of it, and then it doesn't germinate and so forth. So a preacher looks for the fertile soil. But that statement of somebody being austere or devoted, also devotees who are very expert, they know how to also create an environment in which people can become austere and devoted. And I'll give you an example. When devotees go out, for instance, to distribute books, there's a way in which, because of their intense desire to engage other people in Krishna service, based on the fact that they have an understanding that it's absolutely necessary. I was one day distributing books in the San Francisco airport, where I practically lived for about 10 years. Happily, too. Kurvani viha karmani jijivishek shatam sama evam tvai nanyate tostina karma lipite nare. The Sri Upanishad says that one may go on working in this way for hundreds of years and not become implicated in the law of karma. There's no alternative to this way for man. In other words, the verse in the Sri Upanishad is talking about how everyone needs to have some connection to the process of Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, they'll become more and more entangled. And I was speaking to a young person who was only marginally interested in what I was presenting. And then that verse came into the purview of my consciousness, because I used to, on my drive to the airport, I would chant several sets of shlokas. It was my routine. I'd get in the car, and that's what kind of kept me going. It was by mantra. You got to go by mantra. Because I get in the car, and if the mind would say stay home or go somewhere else and do something else, I had my routine, and I stuck to it. And I would say the mantras, and among them was the Sri Upanishad mantras. So by the time I got to the airport and I was distributing, I was thinking that verse, that there's no alternative to this way for man. That kept going through my head. And when I was talking to this young man, he was marginally interested. I felt this extra impetus to push him over the edge, to make him interested. That I thought he has to take this because, and I thought also that I have no motive. I don't need anything from him. I'm here as a servant. I'm doing this as my duty, and you have to take it. You just have to. And he wasn't austere or devoted, but I felt like I have to make him austere or devoted. So there are ways in which we can actually maybe psychologically, I hate to use the word corral, but or manipulate. Those are horrible words. But inspire, encourage. Thank you. Very good. To encourage somebody to, come over to the other side, and you can use those things. And that verse in the Bhagavad Gita where he says, "Don't give to somebody who's not austere or devoted." Prabhupada told us, don't just give the books away for free. People won't appreciate them. They'll throw them away. And it's true. I've seen it before. Anybody who hands out anything for free should know that it's being thrown away around the corner in the trash. In fact, the Jews for Jesus used to come to the airport sometimes, and they'd hand out their pamphlets for free. And they always thought they were morally superior to us because we always asked for a donation. And they would sort of look at us askance. But at the bottom of their pamphlets, it always said, "Please dispose of properly." Because everyone threw them away. And they would be down the hallway, there would be a garbage can full of them. And I pulled one out one day and said, "Please dispose of properly." And I couldn't imagine putting that on the Bhagavad Gita. And So so Prabhupada said, ask for, get something in return. Because he said, when they give their $5, $10, then they'll think, what is this nonsense sold me? Prabhupada said things like that. And now I've given my hard-earned $10, let me see what I bought. When you buy something, you want to look at it. So that's an austerity. So when they give something in return for the book, it's an austerity, and it also gives them this devotion. It engenders devotion in them. And so we're gardeners, and you have to make the soil available for the seeds. It's a kind of expertise that someone has to develop. At the same time, Shastra says that we should avoid people who are inimical. So there's a limit. And if somebody's absolutely unready, then the way we look at it is that let them stay on the vine. In other words, we go to pick the ripe fruits. And if we find the people who are already ready, they're like ripe fruits. They come off in your hand very easily, or with a little bit of encouragement. But if they're absolutely not ready, then you leave them on the vine, because everyone's being cooked in the material world by Krishna. That's why we sing Samsara Davanala Lida Loka. And we feel that, let them stay a little longer, and we don't bother them. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very powerful. Prabhupada says that when he went through the Jarikhanda forest, he got the animals to chant. He said, we may not be able to do that, but we may get, certain kinds of people to chant, animal-like men to chant and so forth. And depending on the desire within the heart of the devotee, there is a obvious way in which Krishna assists. In other words, if the desire in the heart of the devotee is stronger to engage the person in Krishna consciousness than in that jiva soul's desire to avoid it, then you win. So you're actually changing destiny. That's the only case in which destiny is changed, because otherwise things go on according to karmic reaction. You can read it in your chart how it's going to go. But devotees come and intervene in people's lives, and they create some austerity. And that's why people get a gata sukriti, unknown pious activities, because they don't know what they're doing at first. They may do something, they may engage in some charitable act, or they may hear the holy name when devotees purposefully go out and chant Hare Krishna on the streets or wherever they go, or preach in universities and so forth, and somebody hears it. Then it plants this sukriti in their heart, which then grows up. And when there's more of a contribution of sukriti, and there's enough, the Brihad Naradiya Purana says, then Shraddha is born, that faith awakens in a person's heart. So even if the person's not ready, and we leave them with some kind of memento or exposure to Krishna consciousness, then later on it'll fructify, and they won't know what hit them. Prabhupada mentions this in the story of Shivananda Sain taking care of a dog. And he talks about how when we distribute prasadam, that people get this unknown benefit because they don't know they're taking food that's actually spiritual. And even beyond their comprehension at the time, they're getting this sukriti. It will fructify at a certain time, it never goes in vain. Neha bikramanashosti pratyabhaya navidyate swalpam apyasitarmasya trayate mahato bhaya. What do you think? Okay. Thank you. What else? I love the gardening metaphor. It's perfect. It works. Yeah.
I like that this section part where it says the tree agent doesn't ask the price. Because everything. I appreciated that Sri Chaitanya does not ask the price, it said in the verse, because everything else that's going on has some kind of agenda to it. And it's kind of causeless mercy. generosity. He's just coming and giving, and it's really sweet.
And Karabhajana Muni says in his verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam that Mahaprabhu chases after the conditioned souls. Mayamrigam dayit tamandadavan. It describes how he runs after people who are of animalistic mentality, just to give them an opportunity to take Krishna consciousness. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur did, in his marketplace for the holy name, did charge a price. It's faith. You got to have a little faith to do it. Faith moves the world. We do meet people sometimes say, "Chant, say Hare Krishna." No, won't say it. In fact, someone said that their mother was passing away, and they said, "Just say Hare Krishna." And the mother said, "Why should I do that?" And then she died. And Prabhupada said, with the energy that she took to say, to object, she could have just said Hare Krishna, and it would have been easier. And but there needs to be some kind of qualification, some sukriti for people to do that. Manish.
So in that same chapter, Krishna says that we should not give this message to somebody who doesn't have faith, but then he says that if you do this, you're very dear to me, in the following verses.
Well, actually, he says in those following verses that you should, those who preach this among my devotees. Or it actually means among the devoted. If you preach among the devoted, you're the most dear to me. But again, it comes into the point, everyone's a spiritual soul and has some kind of devotion. They have a devotional sentiment hidden in their heart, and it's a matter of uncovering it. Did you have? Yes. Right.
There was a mention in a purport, a couple of purports ago, that a devotee may have a particular attraction for one of the 9 processes of bhakti, but then there's preaching, and so it can seem that preaching, it seems like preaching means kirtan, like chanting, but I'm wondering if preaching can be applied in each of the processes of devotional service, like as a devotee may have a particular attraction. So,
You mean a devotee, like a devotee sitting in this room, might have a particular attraction to one of the 9 processes?
well, any devotee, because it was mentioned there that a devotee may develop will develop a particular attraction to one of the 9 processes of devotional service, and they're all bona fide ways of serving Krishna. So I'm just wondering if preaching, because preaching is
Kirtan.
yeah, but I'm just wondering if it can be, it means preaching is kirtan. So I'm just wondering, if a devotee is attracted to something else than kirtan, then how does that work out?
Works out fine, huh?
If I understand right, it's saying that if they are attracted to other processes, are they preaching or not? Because preaching seems to...
Well, the point is, when you hear properly, then there's a natural overflow of what you hear, and it comes out in your life, in your words, and the way you live. It's not what you know. Gopi Pranadhana used to say this. It's not what you know, it's who you are. And it's who you are. And so there's a way in which, by hearing and practicing oneself, then you exude certain qualities. Yasyasya bhaktir bhagavati akinchana sarvasya guna sarvar gunas tatra samasati suraha. There's a way that the good qualities naturally come out from somebody, just like polishing a stone that's dirty, and it comes out. So we find that in all kinds of ways, the devotees who are developing Krishna consciousness, they become an asset. They become assets for the world. When I was at the farm in Hungary, Shivaram Maharaj's project there, I talked to the head pujari. Sometimes I like to sit down with the head pujaris and ask them about how they conduct their deity worship. And so the devotee there talked to me for a few hours and showed me all the details of what they do. And I asked her, what's their mission statement and for the Pujari department? And she said, it's preaching. And I wasn't so shocked because it's coming from Shiva Maharaj, she said, and he's a preacher. And so I said, so how does that work? And she said, we mold all the deity worship program around introducing the deities to new people. For instance, they have a fan, and when you pull the chain over by the side of the altar, then the fan fans Radheshyam on the altar. And also, I noticed that when we were there, they have the temple room set up theater style. There are all these chairs set up, and when the buses come in to see the farm, the people get off, and then they take them on a tour, and they go inside the temple room, and they all sit down in rows before the deity, and then they introduce them. Here's Radheshyam. And most of them go away with a picture of Radheshyam, take home, and they actually become devoted to the deity. They appreciate this is actual transcendental personality, and they feel some relationship. And so in every circumstance, there's a way in which devotee, through the overflow of what they already have, a feeling of generosity, especially those following Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, can give it to others. Does that work for you? Kinda? Raj?
Srila Prabhupada had that statement from the Indian Railroad that everyone should help keep the wheels turning. And ISKCON movement, the institution of ISKCON, allows that whatever we do in the mission, it helps in spreading the glories of Lord Chaitanya.
Yeah. Everyone works together. Kandarvika?
So Prabhuji, this question is related to the glories of the holy name that we read yesterday and also the today's morning class by Vedavyas Prabhu, where we read that the same benefit of meditation and all those austerities can be achieved simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. But my question is, sometimes in the material world, like when they want to introduce some investment plans or something, they just put in the bold letters that in 3 years you'll get like 6 times more money. But then they put a star on the top and they tell like 50% is this fees and conditions apply. So like that, is this, when it is said in the Shastras that by chanting the holy name even once, you get all this. But then later on, it says that you have to, but you have to do all these offenses have to be avoided. But at least in the material world, it feels like you can overcome those conditions in material stuff, but when it comes to the offenses, it seems almost impossible. For example, if we consider the offense that to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. So it almost seems impossible that we will never overcome the offenses and we may not get the first, how it was said in the Shastras for that matter, that you get the same benefit. So how do we understand that it's the real thing that we will get? Because that faith is not complete without understanding that yes, I will get that one day.
You'll definitely get it. And what's required is sweet surrender, giving up the burden of carrying material desires. If we study the science of Krishna consciousness, see, even the hyenas are appreciating the kirtan. They just started the harmonium. Material desires are superfluous to us. Anarto pasanam sakshad bhakti yoga madhoksaje lokasya janato vidmams chakre satvata samhitam. Srila Vyasadeva, understanding that people were unnecessarily carrying the burden of material desires, and that they didn't know the formula for overcoming them, purposefully compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam just as the medicine so that they could become purified of those material desires. And actually the whole process is very optimistic. That Kapila Dev says, just as when you eat food and it gets digested by the stomach, you don't even see how it's being done. That in the same way, when you hear and chant, when you engage in the 9 processes of devotional service, your material desires become eradicated by the mercy of the Lord. Krishna helps from within the heart. Shrinvatam swa kata Krishna punya shravana kirtana trityantaksto hibadrani vidunoti suritsatam. It's a very optimistic process. In other words, it's not saying, there's not a little asterisk and at the bottom it says, you take this medicine, it's great medicine, but you're going to, have dry mouth and maybe get cancer and go brain dead. This happens sometimes. But on the contrary, if you read Ajamil in the 6th chapter, it's astoundingly optimistic. It's saying that this person was the lowest person of all, and he had every material desire possible, and he overcame them simply by saying Narayan, son of the name of his son, who he had named Narayan, by the mercy of the Lord, because he had given him the intelligence to name your son Narayan. I told the story last night about a devotee who grew up in the movement and became wayward, and his name brought him back, and so forth. The preponderance of evidence in the Shastra is all towards the definite, optimistic reality that if you just stay connected to the process somehow or other, you'll overcome the material desires through exposure to the power of the holy name. And there's no doubt about it. And Krishna says this over and over again, even in the Bhagavad Gita, that if you just do this, like I said, tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mama nusmara yujacha mayarpita mano buddhir mami vaishyatya samshaya. Without any doubt, he keeps saying over and over again, without any doubt, you'll get it. You'll get it very easily. In the 5th chapter, he says, you're assured of success. Somebody who simply goes on with this process. So don't worry. Masuchaha. Just surrender. Don't worry. Go on with the process. And because of your contribution to Krishna consciousness over a lifetime, Krishna will give you full intelligence how to overcome the process. And if you're not able to, then someone will come in like Vidura at the last minute and say, let's go, we're getting out of here. And Krishna will send somebody. I just heard a story about that today. One of my godbrothers was telling me about another godbrother who was passing away, and he was a little reluctant at the end. But in any case, he even started calling him Dhritarashtra and said, come on, Dhritarashtra, let's go. We got 5 days left here, let's move. And there was one devotee, he had practiced Krishna consciousness for some time, and then he became a little spaced out. And, he was dying, and he went into a hospital in New York. He's watching TV. So the temple president, Ramabhadra, who knew him very well, went in there and goes, what are you doing? Turn the TV up, we're going to Vrindavan. Let's go to Vrindavan. And he got him a ticket, he got him on the plane, took him to Vrindavan, and said, okay, now die, So Krishna takes care of the devotees. I mean, Prabhupada says in the Nectar of Instruction that if you take to the process of Krishna consciousness and then you balk, don't worry, Krishna will forcibly drag you. And in the light of the Bhagavat, emergency. Sorry. In the light of the Bhagavat, in the descriptions of Adam, there's a...
So mobile phone is nearby.
Is there a phone in your bag? We should have one of those metal detectors at the door. Hare Krishna. Gauranga. See, we know how to fix stuff. There, that did it. Okay, so it says that in the autumn season, when the mating is going on, and the female becomes pregnant, she's going to have a baby. Whatever is it, a deer or a dog or a human, whatever. the female's pregnant, and the result will come, the child will come. So Prabhupada mentions this. He says the result of devotional service is sure and certain. Sure and certain. And even if once pregnant, the child's going to come. So we should cultivate that part, understand the optimistic aspect of devotional service, how powerful it is, that it's beyond our scope to understand how merciful Krishna is. Burijan Prabhu told me a couple of years ago when we were in Vrindavan, I sat next to him at Prasadam. He leaned over to me and said, he said, I'm going to tell you 2 things that will change your life. I said, okay, go ahead. I want to hear it. I want my life to be changed. So he said, here's the 2 things you have to know. Krishna is all powerful and he's all merciful. So he said then, if Krishna was all powerful but not all merciful, you'd be in big trouble. And if he was all merciful but not all powerful, what could he do anyway? But he's all merciful and all powerful. That's a winning combination. And so we should depend on that. Depend on that when we in our process of surrender. And that we're safe. By surrender, we actually become safe and change our course in life gradually towards just letting Krishna take care of the process. And it's fun anyway. I mean, what's not nice about Krishna consciousness? To just dedicate your life through the different stages to cultivating Krishna consciousness. There's no harm. And if you stay alive in Krishna consciousness, says Sridhar Swami in the Tate Anukampam Susamikshamano. Actually, this is one of my favorite mantras. Not even the verse itself, which is one of my favorite mantras, but even in the purport, the way that Hridayananda Maharaj has brought out the commentary of Sridhar Swami is brilliant. And he says, as you know, because I've said it a million times before, but it's just so nice, I'll say it again, that the son of a rich man simply has to stay alive. That's his duty, because he inherits. And the duty of a devotee is to stay alive in Krishna consciousness. So figure out how to do that. And everything else Krishna takes care of. How to stay alive in Krishna consciousness. Stay alive. Yeah, that was the Doobie Brothers sang that mantra, staying alive, staying alive. But you just stay alive in Krishna consciousness. And so now we have rivaling bhajan going on downstairs, but we got Omkar up here, so we're not worried. We're going to have a bhajan. Oh, we're missing Madhukar. Yeah.